The film opens with Mallory Hayes instructing to young children, boy and girl, on how to navigate a river while blindfolded. She emphasizes that under no circumstances should they remove their blindfolds. With that, they leave the house they stayed in, went to go find transportation, and by a river they find a boat and push off in it, beginning a harrowing journey downstream. 5 years earlier, in a flashback, Mallory is pregnant and living with her sister Jessica. Reports of mass suicides are spreading globally, but they seem distant. They decide to go to the hospital since Mallory is pregnant, and she gets a quick check on her stomach to make sure everything is good. When she leaves the room, she sees a woman harming herself, not knowing what to do. She goes to tell Jessica that the phenomenon reaches their own city. While driving Mallory home from a doctor's appointment, they witness all the crazy things that are happening and they get frustrated, but then Jessica suddenly sees something invisible in the street. She starts speeding, not in control of the car, and then they crash into another car. Soon Jessica gets out the car like nothing happened. Her expression changes from confusion to horror. Mallory stumbles through the chaotic streets as more people fall victim. As she's running, she gets tripped and falls, but a woman near a house sees her on the ground and tries to go help her, but she also sees something invisible and is not in control of herself anymore. Her husband Douglas watches her as she gets in a car on fire and kills herself. Mallory is pulled into a house by Tom, a former soldier with a protective nature. Inside, a group of strangers has barricaded themselves. They try to get service so they can make calls, but they fail to get any. For more protection, they close all the windows in the house. As they discuss what's happening, Charlie suggests the entities are supernatural, taking different terrifying forms for each person. The group realizes they must avoid looking outside. They blindfold themselves when necessary. Mallory starts talking to Tom about what she witnessed, and she gets emotional since she doesn't know what's happened. The next morning, they talk about if they will have enough food and need to go on a food run, but Douglas continues to say they won't make it back home. But suddenly, they hear a loud knock on their front door, and they check to see who it is. Mallory holds up a gun to be protected while everyone covers their eyes. It's a woman named Olympia who is also terrified, but is also pregnant. Greg comes up with an idea to use live cameras that are put around his house. He explains they could use it for supply runs, but Mallory and Douglas doesn't think it's a good idea. He gets tied up to a chair in case anything happens to him, and he tells Mallory everything will be fine. Moments later, as he is looking at cameras, a shadow appears, and he sees something on the screen. Then everyone starts hearing banging noises from the room Greg was in. They all go upstairs to check what was happening, and chaos happens. Someone invisible flips his chair, causing him to hit his head on a desk, and when everyone uncovers their eyes, they discover Greg dead on the ground. In the morning, they realize food is running low. They try to figure out who is going to the supermarket and who stays in the house. After a little while, they decide to make a risky trip to a supermarket. Using a car with its windows blacked out and GPS for navigation, they arrive to the supermarket in a harsh way, but everyone is not hurt. They get out the car with blindfolds on until they get in. Inside, they gather lots of supplies, looking for everything they need to bring back. Charlie, who worked there, suggests they stay instead of returning to the house. But before they can decide, a former co-worker, now insane from seeing the creatures, tries to force them to look. In the struggle, Charlie sacrifices himself to save the others, pushing the attacker into the storage room, and they quickly see Charlie is no longer alive. The group rushes back to the house, shaken. A little while after, when Greg and Mallory are having a conversation, Felix and Lucy go in the garage with bags. Then they hear the garage opening and a car starting, and get curious, so they go check, and they see the car is gone, and Felix and Lucy aren't there anymore, which causes more frustration. Olympia, by the front door, hearing a desperate man named Gary begging for shelter, so she lets him in, but the others didn't know he was coming, and so Mallory gets the gun pointing it at him. Gary explains these psychos break into people's home, forcing them to look outside, but he claims he didn't look outside. He reveals that some people, instead of killing themselves, become Seers worshippers of the creatures who try to force others to look. One day, while most of the group is distracted, Gary suddenly removes the coverings from the windows, letting in sunlight. Tom comes back downstairs to getting hit by Gary. Then he shows Douglas his eyes and opens the garage for more sunlight as Douglas tries to cover his eyes. Gary then forces Olympia, another pregnant woman, to look, causing her to jump out a window. Cheryl is forced to see outside and she sees the creatures and kills herself. Douglas comes upstairs with a gun to try to take down Gary, but Gary tackles him and they both fall. but Gary grabs scissors and kills Douglas. Tom wakes up and kills Gary in a violent struggle. Both Mallory and Olympia's babies are born, but the house is no longer safe. 5 years later to its present timeline, now raising two children named Boy and Girl, they survive together in isolation. One day, they receive a radio transmission from a supposed safe community. Tom decides they should go, but before they can leave, the Sears arrive at their home. During the ambush, Tom fights them off, but is forced to open his eyes. Instead of succumbing immediately, he resists long enough to kill the remaining attackers and ensure Mallory and the kids escape. Then he takes his own life. Back on the river, Mallory and the children must navigate rapids. The only way to survive is for someone to remove their blindfold and guide the boat. But ultimately, she refuses to let either child sacrifice themselves. Instead, she uses her instincts and memory to steer. The boat capsizes, but she manages to get them safely to shore. While going through the woods blindfolded, Mallory trips and falls down, and the kids walk in different directions. Soon when she wakes up, she panics as she can't find them. Soon she uses her voice to guide them where she is at, and she finds Boy. While Girl is by herself, she takes off her blindfold with her eyes closed, but she finally hears Mallory's voice, and she returns to Mallory safe. Following bird sounds, Mallory and the kids stumble upon a walled sanctuary. Inside, they find survivors including Mallory's former doctor. The refuge is revealed to be a school for the blind, where most inhabitants are immune to the creature's effects. Mallory finally gives Boy and Girl real names for the first time. She names Girl Olympia after her mother and names Boy Tom. Thanks for watching until the end, and if you made it this far, make sure you subscribe for more breakdowns.